Hello, educator friends, and welcome to the School Life series. Today, we have another super special episode with you with a very special guest on a topic that I am really fired up about. So, the guest is Barrett Duncan, and the topic is all about curriculum. So, this is one that I think both teachers and leaders are definitely going to want to stick around for. So, let's meet our guest. Barrett Duncan, right here, is a proud Texas educator. You're going to hear it in his voice here in a second. But I've had the honor to connect with Barrett through the Get Your Teach On community, who's just connected me with so many awesome educators across the country. But he started his journey in the classroom, and today he's now an elementary curriculum specialist with the passion of supporting teachers. And so I also love that, like many educators out there, I would say the majority of educators, he's got a little side hustle going. And not only is he an educator, but he's a licensed realtor in East Texas too. So Barrett, thank you for being
Thank
on
you.
here and welcome to the School Life series.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to share a little bit about curriculum, which I feel like when everybody hears that, they're like, "Oh gosh, here we go again." I promise it's not a sales pitch,
Yeah.
everybody. I
No,
promise.
he is
But
not associated with any
no,
company here.
no, not at all. But I'm super excited to be here. And like Ross said, if you can't tell from my voice, I'm from Texas.
Yeah.
That's always what I start out with because you can tell right away when you hear me. They're like, "Yeah, he's from the South somewhere." Texas, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm from a small town in East Texas called Lufkin. A lot of people have no clue where that is. So just go to Houston on the map, go about an hour and a half to 2 hours north, and then you'll be there. I grew up to a family of educators, and that's kind of what got me going. But like Ross said, I work in education. I started out really as a sub, then to a para, then to a teacher. Then I was a coach. And then now I'm working at a regional service center supporting curriculum implementation, which is my dream job. I pinch myself daily. But in addition to that, I am a licensed realtor. I started that about 2.5 years ago from a friend that just kind of it's like, hey, you've got a good personality to do it. You could sell some stuff, you could sell some houses, and you'll have fun. And so I've really enjoyed it. So I've been able to connect with my community, not just through education, but with educating them on that process too. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, I'm just going to ask it. Let's be real. Are you selling houses?
It's picked up a lot right now. The market has. Everybody wants to move after the new year. And I think people were stuck in their house for so long with the ice in Texas that they're like, I've got to get out. I've got to find a new home. And
That's
so
cool.
it's picked up.
So your phone's ringing now.
Yeah. No, I mean, not right now, but it probably will be a little bit later this afternoon after work.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that, and I love too that you mentioned it. But I think some of the best educators, teachers, principals, leaders, curriculum specialists, you name it, are the ones that had stepping stones along the way. I mean, like you said, I was with you. I started out substitute teaching in college, and I gained more knowledge and experience subbing than I ever did setting in a university classroom. That was the real experience that I needed to go into, and so I like that that is part of your journey. So thanks for sharing that and sharing more about you. I think it's so important. I say this on every episode. I think it's so important for educators to hear that, this is your journey. You're a human. We need to tell our students, this is my journey. I'm a human too. I'm not just a robot in front of the classroom here. And so to go along with that, in your journey, in your life, who can you say has just been the biggest influence on you, both personally, professionally? You can do one or two people, however you want to answer that.
And it's so hard to pick and like narrow it down. Of course, whenever like you ask that question, I'm like, oh, I could say a million people. But, professionally, because I like to view us as half human, half
Yeah.
educators or half human, half professionals. But professionally speaking, all of my mentors, I've had some amazing bosses, some amazing leaders, some amazing curriculum directors that have just poured into me and have
Yeah.
kind of propelled me to where I am today. So I'm really thankful for them. And then also, kind of personally and professionally, I grew up in a house of teachers. I mean, my parents are both teachers. My dad was a PE coach and gymnastics coach, and my mom taught kindergarten and primary ages. And then now she's a literacy coordinator. And so I've had those people pouring into me for my entire life, and they've really influenced me quite a bit.
I love that answer. And I love how it wasn't just one person. I think it's so important. I talk to my own kids about this a lot, surrounding yourself with the right people. I mean, luckily you were born into the right people and you had a lot of support there, but sounds like along your way, you just surrounded yourself by the right people. And so that's so cool.
Absolutely.
Now, my next question, and I was just the obvious here, like you and I are both in this boat. I was this boat as a 27-year-old principal. Like, we're not super old. And you said just a few minutes ago, you're in your dream job already. And there's going to be people listening and like, how did he how did he get there so quick? And that was, I got that all the time. How are you a principal already? Like, but was there a moment you could say in your trajectory of your school life that like they really clicked for you and allowed you to make those steps to step into your dream job?
And there are, it's hard again, like the question you asked before about like one specific person or,
Yeah.
it's a lot of people. There's been so many different culminating experiences that have really helped build me up as a teacher and as a leader. And I kind of center back to something and an experience that I had with a student. And so the work that I do really surrounds providing equity for students so that
Hmm.
because all students deserve to have high quality instruction. That's my philosophy. And so as a teacher, had a student that, was living below poverty level. She had so many challenges at home. And I remember there was one time she was such a brilliant student and she came in very upset one day and we could never really get out of her what was going on. And then so we just kept watching. Her grades were phenomenal. She was a brilliant young lady. And so she moved on to the next grade level. Well, at the beginning of that next grade level, we had a really bad storm and she came to school again in that kind of, you know, different state. And
Yeah.
she come to find out through conversations with her teacher and then conversations with our school community, she had something happen at home. So a tree branch fell on her home
Wow.
and she had a snake fall into her bed and she couldn't sleep that night. And so
Oh my gosh.
after that, we did different things to help her out. But at that moment, I knew that I was in the right place, doing the right thing, and she deserved the best education she could possibly get because she has such a bright future ahead of her that if that wasn't provided and that wasn't all of our mission, she would miss out on so many opportunities. And so I knew at that point that my goal was to ensure that all kids, regardless of where they come from, what label they have, get a high quality educational experience. So I carried that with me as a teacher, carried that with me as an instructional coach, and now working at a region service center, I help other teachers and leaders see that and find a way to make sure that happens. So that's kind of my mission and when that
Yeah.
happened.
It's great, and I think it's so good that you carry that mission with you every chance you get. I'm sure you are sharing not that exact story, but just the importance of how important it is for teachers and leaders and educators to just show up their best self and give these kids the best that we got because it amazes me how much baggage our students are come to school with. And then
We
they
think about us having
yeah.
baggage. We come in
Yeah,
on a bad day. Think about when they come in on a bad day and they don't have the skills to tell us and verbalize, here are all of my challenges that I'm having. And
exactly.
so they have so much potential and we just have to tap into it and ensure they get what they need and we show up as our best self all the time.
Yeah, that's good. We would always talk about A scores as a principal and would be always shocked teachers when a 10-year-old has a higher A score than the 50-year-old. They've seen
Mhm.
one-fifth of their life and they've already seen more than anything that they could ever imagine. So thank
Absolutely.
you. That was pretty serious question. And I want to wrap up the kind of intro here with a couple more questions, but maybe not so heavy. The first one is what is a moment in your education career? I'm guessing you're going to go back to the classroom for this. You can say, this was something that you were not going to believe happened to me.
So, well, I'm going to go back. I guess there's two that I would really like to talk about. But the first one was something that I did as a teacher. There
Okay.
are constantly times that I think back and all I can do is laugh at myself because I'm very dynamic and sometimes that
Yes,
causes some things to happen. So
I get
I
you.
had a
Yeah.
student that was, all over the place. He was very, very energetic. And so he would do things, he'd be out of his seat, just doing some of the craziest things. You can just probably visualize a student that you have right now or have had
Mhm.
before that is like that. And I went back to lunch and I was showing my colleagues what he was doing. So just to paint the picture of what I was wearing a button down like this one. I was wearing jeans and then I was wearing cowboy boots because I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas,
And
yeah.
I was showing what the kid did. He was doing some sort of kicking move. I ended up ripping my pants. Okay. So, and it wasn't like it could be covered up, anything like that. So I went to my principal and I said, "Hey, I've got to do something. I've got to go home and change." I said, "But I live like 40 minutes away from the school. If I go home, there's no point in me spending the time to come back and then the day's over with." So we had a staff meeting that afternoon and I was supposed to speak at that staff meeting. And so at that staff meeting, it was our whole school community as well as sometimes our district administrators would come. And so I was sharing something on like student discourse, or I can't remember exactly what it was. And my principal said, "Nope." She said, "You're going to have to figure something out." Well, at that point, I was a very broke teacher. We got paid once a month and it was not payday time. So the only thing that I had in my car was a pair of running shorts, and I didn't have shoes because why would I
Yeah,
have had
cowboy boots.
I had cowboy boots, running shorts, and a button down, and I had to speak in front of district admin. And luckily, they knew that that wasn't the norm, but it was so embarrassing, but one of the funniest things I look back at.
That's awesome. Not that you split your pants, but yeah, that
I
you said, "You
mean,
know what? I'll be a trooper here and let's go. Let's
yep.
do it."
I just owned it. I mean, all I can do is laugh,
Yeah.
and now I wish I had pictures of it, but unfortunately, I don't.
That was my next question. I was gonna ask, are there photos that are still out
There's
there
no
anywhere?
evidence, but if I
No
had
evidence.
my previous principal over here, she'd be like, "Yep, I made him."
I'm sure. That's cool. I love it. All right, last question in the intro. And education, I feel like is just under fire constantly in 2020 and just the state of our society and whatnot. And so my question for you to all of our listeners, and maybe this is something that listeners can take with them and share, but what's something about education you wish more people understood?
You know, education is necessary. I think oftentimes we forget its importance because we're so focused on so many different things. But, the children within our school systems, they deserve the best because they are going to be leading here in the future. They're going to be running our country. They're going to be running our companies. They're going to be, the critical thinkers that are making actionable changes in the future. And so if we don't invest in them and give them the best, then we're failing our society. We constantly want to make sure that when they leave the K-12 system, that they're able to be productive members of society. And we have to provide the best in order for that to happen. There's so much research out, and AI is such a big thing now. I know Dell had some probably like 7 years back, some research that talked about how like 90% of the jobs that students will have in 2050, 2060 are not even created yet.
There. Yeah.
And so we have to equip them with critical thinking skills and the skills, soft skills that are necessary for them to be
Yeah.
successful in the future.
Yep.
In short, patience is so necessary and it deserves to be poured into.
Yeah. That's great. And I think to connect with that, we say, "Well, how do we create or how do we educate for jobs that aren't there?" And it's like you said, give them the soft skills, give them the character traits that they need to be successful regardless of what their job is.
Absolutely.
Be great humans, right? Be successful, be
Exactly.
productive.
Humans just brand that. That's the whole purpose. Be great
That's
humans.
it. Yeah, that's it. So, all right. Hey, thank you, Bear. Now let's dive into today's topic. I already said, I'm fired up about this because curriculum is something that I think we all we'd help with. So today's topic is curriculum. How do we make this actually work? And how do we move from adoption to impact? So take it. The floor is yours. How do we move from adoption to classroom impact?
And I'm no expert at all in this.
Yeah.
I just know what I needed as a teacher, what I needed as a coach, what my students needed. And then from what I'm seeing, actively being in the field doing this work, adoption is your first step. You have to have that collective commitment that we're going to believe in using a set of materials, a set of curriculum, whatever that may be, and having that collective commitment and using it. So that's the first thing. That's, fidelity. Everybody
Yeah.
hates hearing that word, but
Yeah.
that's where that is. The next step is when we enact that in the classroom. So how's the picture being painted in the classroom? And, an analogy that I often talk about and I've used in trainings and we use it across the state and it's great and I love it and I kind of tweak it around a little bit, but it talks about HelloFresh. Okay. So HelloFresh is a boxed meal plan and it tells you here's all of your ingredients and then here is the directions for how to do it. Here's your recipe. Okay. Well, I know myself. I can burn food sometimes because I don't always like to follow recipes. I
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
kid that, would get the Lego kits and throw the instructions out, or try to assemble an IKEA shelf with no instructions just to see if it would be fun. Because unfortunately, sometimes that's how I, and I know a lot of people are like that too. And so when you do that or omit that, you may still burn it and not get the right end product. You may not get a successful result. And the same thing goes with curriculum. I think of it like HelloFresh, you have your salmon. Well, I like salmon. Okay. And everybody's going to get salmon. But I know that people that are coming to my party are allergic to lemon. So I can't put the typical lemon pepper seasoning. So I'm going to change it and I'm going to put something else, but I'm still getting salmon. I'm still getting the same meat, but I'm just modifying it towards what's needed. And that's where you really bring it to life is through, those changes and adjustments based on student needs and local decisions, and all of those pieces are your recipe modifications per se.
that's good. Great analogy. That makes sense. And so, that's you kind of answered this question already a little bit, but what does that like fidelity look like in real schools? Because we use that term all the time, but I think very few of us know what it actually should look like in our schools.
For sure. And, fidelity is that huge buzzword. It's just like
Hmm.
rigor. Yeah, I guess right now, if you're talking about curriculum, it's probably the new rigor. But fidelity is not something that needs to be scary.
Okay.
Fidelity just means that it's being used, and it's being used the way that it's designed to be used. However, fidelity, I like to refer to it as inspecting what you expect. So deciding what you expect and then inspecting to see that it's happening. For curriculum, that everybody's using the materials and everybody's using it in a way that meets their learners. That's
No.
true fidelity. Not reading it from a script,
Yeah.
not word for word using a smart panel and just going through slides, but actually bringing it to life in the classroom. That's what true fidelity looks like.
It's great. And I don't do this very often, and that is to take the side of curriculum developers and and whatnot. But you know, think about the job they have at hand. They're trying to create a curriculum for every kid in America across the entire spectrum here, right? From high learners to low learners to poverty and demographics and all this stuff. Like, think
Yep.
about the task at hand, and so fidelity doesn't necessarily have to should come from the company, publisher, the fidelity comes from you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so
Fidelity is what you expect it to
yeah,
look like, feel like, sound like within your context.
exactly.
And, the thing is, like you said, it is universal. It's something that's designed to meet all learners. Now, of course, there are scaffolds in place and supports for teachers. But, one thing I like to go back to is, you think about in college, do you remember having to make those huge long lesson plans? And
Yeah,
oh my word, you spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing that. Well, during that time where I was sourcing my materials, I was creating the most beautiful lesson plan. I would often notice whenever I would enact that lesson plan that it didn't always hit, it didn't always connect, or sometimes it wasn't at the level it needed to be because I may have students that are above level, on level, below level, some students that have specific learning disabilities, some students that maybe learn, different ways that I didn't have time when I was sourcing the materials to even think about their needs. How do I support those students? And so sometimes it was very stressful. So it's kind of a mind shift almost.
yeah, that's good. That's great. I think I talk about mindset all the time, and so that's gonna lead us into this next question because I think mindset is a big part of this next question. But in your opinion, why do so many curriculums fail in our schools? I mean, I remember when I took over as a principal, I walked into teacher workrooms, and there were stacks and stacks of textbooks and curriculum that were still in packaging. They failed. Our school district spent thousands of dollars, and we failed here. Why does it happen so often?
There's so many constraints and I use constraints because they're fixable, but that make it harder to implement a curriculum. So I think about it, and I'm going to go ahead and just start from the top down. Oftentimes, a curriculum is decided and it's given to teachers and said, "Hey, there's no professional development. Here you go, make it work for your kids." And it's almost like getting a series of books and just saying, "Okay, tomorrow you need to give me a presentation on how and what happened within this book." It's hard to do. And if you have
Yeah,
no guidance on it or you have no, skills that you've learned before, it's hard. And so oftentimes curriculum is just thrown and given without the proper supports to make it successful. So thinking of like as simple as, curriculum coordinators training on the materials, or a principal prioritizing PLC time and having a focused topic that you're looking at, or
Yeah.
specific structures. If they're not in place or prioritized, it doesn't hit. It doesn't work. And that's why I think it really it fails.
Yeah, it makes sense. It really does, and I think it's a complex problem, but there are solutions to it. And I mean, your role is a big solution for schools. Just having someone to say, "Hey, we need help. Can you assist here?" is so important. And unfortunately, there aren't people like you that are in a lot of different
Well,
areas and
and
districts and
another
states.
thing, just kind of adding in to that is you don't always see immediate success when doing something new. Okay.
Mm.
So I don't know if you run races or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's one of my goals. I want to run more. But think about you deciding that you're going to run a race, right? You register for that 5K, 10K, marathon, triathlon, whatever it is, right? And you decide that you're going to do that, but you expect day one, you've never ran before. It's something new. Or maybe you've ran in the past, but it's been a while and you're doing something new for the first time. If I said that that race was tomorrow, I'd be so unsuccessful. It is a journey, and it's defeating sometimes. There may be a day where it's like, oof, that was horrible. Now I know better. I'll do better next time. And then the next day will be so energizing and you've got it. And then it's a constant up and down of learning experiences. And it's not
Uh,
immediate.
That makes sense. That's a great example. Great example. Yeah, you have to work at it. You got to get better at it too. I think it's so many times we expect to be handed this and we could just take it and go. And we need to spend some time into it and put effort into it. And that can be tough in the education, that's for sure. And so one thing you mentioned to me was hidden work. And I'm very interested to hear more about what this means here with curriculum.
And so, a lot of the hidden work that takes place is some of the behind the scenes work. And you know this as a previous administrator, there's so much that you do that's not noticed or recognized
Yeah.
sometimes. Like think about, how long it takes to make a master schedule that's thoughtful to meet the needs of all of your teachers and students.
The whole month of June. Yeah.
I mean, right, but nobody
Yeah.
sees those things in place, right? That's kind of some of the hidden work that I'm thinking about, and also some of the other hidden work is from a teacher's seat, a teacher's perspective. You're going home, or you are in your PLCs or during your conference time, whenever it may be. Hopefully, not too much at home because you've got a life outside of school. But hopefully, during those times when you're planning and you're having to figure out, okay, I'm going to do this engagement strategy, or I'm going to change my read aloud to look like this to ask deeper questions, or I'm going to do
Mhm.
this, discourse activity. Those are some of the things that aren't explicitly stated for you to do, but it takes time for you to figure out that people don't always see that happening. So there's so much hidden work, so much structures that need to be put in place, so much, honestly, philosophical work, setting your mission and goals. Like, almost think about when you're starting as a principal, a new principalship, and you're having to draft the campus vision or the campus growth plan. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
People
Oh,
don't always see it.
they always wanna see it. One thing I wanna add to that, 'cause I love that you talked about this hidden works. As educators, we do so much that's behind the scenes that people just don't see, and like you said, we don't get credit for, and not that we want credit for it, but we just want somebody to say thank you sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I think we all of us are guilty of this to some degree. Our hidden work becomes solo work, and I was super guilty of this as a principal. You used the schedule as an example. I remember spending hours and hours in June on a master schedule, and when our teachers came back in August, they threw darts at it and tore it to shreds. And I was like, "Well, you don't know how many hours I spent on
Uh-huh.
this." And I realized in that hidden work that I was not asking questions or asking for support. So the next June, you know what I did? I called up the teachers and I said, "Hey, I know you're drinking a Bahama Mama by the pool right now, but can I ask you 3 questions?" And they
Exactly.
were so appreciative of that because instead of me trying to do it all by myself, they had input into this, and so I could ask questions. So I think that's important in this hidden work is don't go through it alone. If there's something you're curious about or you're just stuck on, reach out, ask questions. So,
And I'm guilty of the same thing. Like I think about honestly in every aspect of my life. I try to put it all on my plate. I'm like, nope, I'll do that for you. Of course I've got it. And or
Uh-huh.
I don't ask for help until I absolutely have to. And I've learned, and that's been one of my goals is to when I don't know, name it and ask for the help. And it's okay to not, and when you're doing something new, whether that is a new position, whether that's a new curriculum, or even something new in your life, if you don't know an answer or you would like to brainstorm a solution, reach out to somebody. There are people that makes them excited. Like I know,
Yeah.
whenever I get emails or calls from somebody that's like, "Hey, I want to think tank this idea for engagement with this lesson," or "I want to talk to you about what do you think we should do in our rollout plan for next year so that teachers don't get overwhelmed." I love talking through that because I'm a nerd, and of course I
Yeah.
could talk about it all day long. But that's what fills my cup is being able to help those. And even if I don't know the answer, let's find the solution and answer together. I mean, like
Yeah.
you said with the master schedule, that's what you did, and it really helps out. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help or to lean on people at all.
Great. Great answer. Loved it. So my last kind of question for you here is you mentioned that curriculum is a tool, not a script. And so what advice do you give to the teacher that was just handed a new curriculum and they want to look at it as, here's what I have to cover, A, B, C, D in this order, and it's frustrating and they don't know where to start. What do you say there?
Think about if you bought a ticket to go see Wicked in the movie theater, okay? And you see the people on stage or not on stage in the movie just reading very monotonely, just reading exactly as it was written on the manuscript. That does not convey emotion. It doesn't meet the needs of the people. So, like in the movie, it didn't meet the needs of the viewers. You didn't get excited to watch it. It would be a crash and burn. The same
Yeah.
thing as with the curriculum. You can read it word for word, but it's not going to hit. You have many seats in your classroom. There's a visual I love to use in any of my sessions that I'm presenting on, and it's a picture of a classroom and it shows a bunch of students sitting in all the seats and it shows all the different labels and needs that they have, which is
Yeah.
always so challenging. And you know that as a principal, like
Yeah.
our students have such diverse needs. And if you read a curriculum word for word, it's not going to work. You're not taking into account are students engaged? Because we know engagement is one of the critical pieces.
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
talking about just fun and games. I'm talking about doing the hard stuff, but cognitive engagement, not just
Yeah.
playing the game.
Yeah,
And
I
then
just
also,
had an episode with Jonathan Alzheimer, and that we dove hard into student engagement. So our listeners have that to go back onto.
and they sometimes people have the all or nothing mindset of engagement is just fun, fun, fun all the time, and there's no substance behind what we're doing. And then you have the complete opposite polar end of the spectrum of sit and get instruction of reading word for word. Neither are going to hit. You have to find that happy medium that meets the needs of your learners. That's where curriculum is effective. Is it's a foundation for you to launch
Oh
off.
yeah, it's good. You hit it right there. Meeting students where they are, and all curriculum's not going to do that for every student. So it's important that we take our tools and we reach our students. So
And
thank you for yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, no, and I just wanted to add in a part that it's a common misconception, and a curriculum sets that on grade level instruction for everybody. It's our job to figure out how to get students to that level to meet it. So
Mhm.
everybody's getting that on grade level instruction, whether you are a grade level behind, two grade level behinds. Now you're providing during your intervention block their supports that they need on their grade level. You're meeting them where they're at. But a shift is here's the level. What can I do as a teacher to support you to even have access to this level? Because if I go down for everybody every year, you're going to constantly stay one grade level
Oh yeah.
behind, two grade levels behind. So instead of constantly going down, accelerating their learning and getting them to where they need to be without holding them back forever.
I like that a lot. Yep, we don't want to hold all of our students back by doing that. And so, as we start to wrap this up, first I want to say thank you for diving into curriculum. I know that's a tough topic. You live and breathe it every single day, but for a lot of our listeners, that's a tough one. So, thank you for bringing your expertise and insight into that. But as we wrap it up, got a couple more questions for you. And one question that I always like to ask here, you've given a lot of strategies and advice, but in general, not curriculum related, what advice do you give to educators who are doing this work on a daily basis right
One thing is not everything is as serious as we make it out to be.
now?
Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. We need to focus on our priorities And then some of the other things we need to not be as serious about. We can get so hung up on standardized testing, whereas instead we should be focused on teaching our kids those soft skills to be flexible so they can take a high stakes assessment.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on test prep, test prep, test prep, let's teach at a level that's high academic and is going to get them there engagement wise that they're successful on standardized assessments.
Yeah.
So
Regardless of what's thrown at them, any assessment. Yeah.
absolutely. And so just be flexible, be excited, make it fun, even if there are changes and things outside of your control. Every day there's something new. A student comes in, dysregulated and causes the day to be a little bit different. Or you have a bad day personally. Or there's, new legislation that's challenging for you that you can't control. Control the controllable.
Good. Good stuff. Next question. What advice do you give to students? Is there something you always share with students that you're working with?
You can do more than you think you can, and you're going to do. You're going to do because your education is the best investment. I know as a teacher, I was very strong on holding students accountable, and I know a lot of educators are, but it was tough love. It wasn't always it's okay, it's fine. There are times that we're going to fail, and it's okay. That's a part of the journey, and you can do those tough things, and you can rebound when you do fail. So, just education's the best thing that you can possibly invest in as
Yeah.
a student. So keep fighting the good fight.
I like that. I like that. So it's such a great conversation. I knew it was going to be, like I said, I was so excited about the topic. So Barrett, thank you again for both sharing your story, but also just your heart for this work and your expertise when it comes to curriculum. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, this is great stuff. I like what Barrett is spitting out here. And maybe they want to bring you into their school. I know I would have loved to bring you into my school to help with curriculum rollout and all that stuff. So if any of our listeners are thinking that, share with them how they can connect with you.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of stuff on social media with my Instagram, and then of course I still call it Twitter, even though I know it's not Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm old, but not that old, but still call it Twitter. But you can search my name on Instagram. It's just Barrett.Duncan, and I'd love to connect with you. And sometimes I show day to day life of what's going on in my curriculum work in schools, and then also real estate and just as a human, all sides of me. And then on Twitter or X, it's my name, Barrett underscore Duncan underscore. Follow me there, reach out and connect. I'd love to chat with you, even if you have questions. Like that's something I really enjoy talking about. So anything. I love to help, and that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and I think I like that about you, that you're human, and you share that human side as much as you share both your professional work as a realtor and as an educator, and so it's really important. I always enjoy following you on social media for those reasons. So thank you again for joining. You are now officially part of the school life community. I really enjoyed this. For all of our
Thank you.
listeners, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. But all of our listeners, thank you again for joining in to this episode and just being a part of the school life community. We pride ourselves on being your partner in positivity. And so if there's a guest that you'd love to hear from or a topic that you want to hear about, reach out and let us know. We will find a way to support you. And until next time, keep doing the work, keep choosing positivity, and be great today.